Chapter 6. Sunrise drew the heavens wide open over Banjul on the day the summit began. The sky above was a cloudless vastness, arcing triumphantly in all directions. What really set the tone were two other vast elements: the sun, very hot, and the Atlantic Ocean, not far away. These two determined the tempo of everything on that day. First, they produced heat and humidity so high as to cast a spell on all events to come. Then they added sweat, which put a damper on each event when it came. The most important event on the day, of course, was the opening of the summit. Its principal participants were heads of state, 50 of them. So, security was at its tightest. Yet, as Comrade Melusi waited in line to be cleared, he was a picture of calmness. He was not worried at all. To kill time, he was reflecting idly on the logic behind security clearance. What was the big idea here? To detect or to data? The two could not be different. Detection spots actual danger at specific points. Detection spots actual danger at specific points and punishes it there. Data, on the other hand, sees potential crime everywhere and punishes it everywhere. So, again, what was the idea behind security clearance? Comrade Melusi decided it was to cover both detection and deterrence. His turn came. "Not good, sir," said a young security officer after x-raying his briefcase. "You have a teeny-weeny boy here who I'd like to see. You know, with this." He meant with his eyes. "Please, show me this little fellow here." He tapped on a dark area on the screen of his x-ray machine. Caught by surprise, Comrade Melusi could not give the youth the calm response he might have given. Then he remembered. Security clearance aims to detect and to data. By harassing everyone, bad and good, it does not only detect actual anger. By harassing everyone, bad and good, it does not only detect actual anger. It also deters potential crime. "What little fellow do you mean, officer?" asked Comrade Melusi, now calmly. "Sir, there seems to be a needle in your briefcase," said the youth. "Oh, you mean that little fellow?" Relieved, Comrade Melusi added cheer to his voice to announce willingness to cooperate. "I'll get him out for you." He took out of his briefcase a cellophane pouch containing a needle and some medicine. "It's for my diabetes," he told the youth, pointing at the needle. Comrade Melusi had discovered he had diabetes during a medical checkup that Agda had asked him to take while he was joining Path Alpha. Since then, his attitude towards diabetes had become proprietary. He owned the affliction, hence my diabetes. The attention with which he read pamphlets about it was similar to the interest with which first-time car owners read user manuals. This attitude had paid off because he was now an authority on diabetes. "Believe me, officer," he told the youth, "without this medicine, I can't live a day." "Is that right?" The youth yawned, making even more obvious his indifference to what he had just heard. "I wouldn't know, sir," he added, meaning he could not be any less interested, his interest being zero already. Then suddenly he snapped to alert. He had remembered something. "Hey, you could hurt other people with that." "With this needle?" "Yes, with that needle. And what would I use for my next shot?" "Just as I thought." "What next shot?" "Officer, let me ask you something. How old do you think I am?" 70? "Yes, plus or minus 5. "That's correct." "Now, out of every 100 people in that age range, 30 of us are diabetic. We are unable to regulate the sugar level in our blood, and that kills most of us. This medicine is what keeps those of us who survive alive." He brandished his cellophane pouch again. "We shot it into our veins with needles like that one." "That may be so, sir, but you cannot take that stuff in. Leave it here with me. I'll do no such thing if I have to wait here until the cows come home." "What cows?" "Sir, you are holding up the line. This needle is my life, officer." "Sir, there are at least 100 people lined up behind you, and they are all diabetic like me, I suppose." "But where is the problem, sir?" Just leave your stuff here. When it's time for your next shot, come get it and go out somewhere and do your thing. What's wrong with that? Comrade Melusi decided to get firm. Young man, look here, he said. It seems I have not made myself clear. The youth cut him off. No, sir. It seems it is I who has not made myself clear. Your needle is not coming in now, later, or ever. Is that clear now? Put it here. He held out a white plastic tray. Comrade Melusi pushed it away. What's with you young officers? His words were louder, their tone of calm gone. Are you hard of hearing, perhaps? Well, if you are, then listen harder. The youth nearly fell off his seat. Now, do exactly as I tell you, and we both get on with our lives. Continue refusing to cooperate, and I ask them to come. He tipped his head in the direction of armed guards. And when they come, they will take care of you, as only they know how. Okay? Okay. It's all okay. It's your call. Still, you are forcing me to climb up a steep mountain of risk here. It ends in blindness, kidney failure, foot ulcers, leg amputations, and many other bad things like that. What is it about this litany of bad things that gave the youth reason to change his mind? Anyway, he did. All right, sir. The more I look at you, the more I see somebody I can trust. So, sir, I'll let you in with your medicine after all. Please proceed. The two men were having lunch at Chaminuka restaurant in downtown Harare. Padalfa still lay in the future. Nevertheless, as became clearer and clearer during the conversation they were having, Banjul would soon lie firmly on their trajectory. After defeating Smith, Comrade Melusi told his visitor, Zimbabwe had one urgent order of business still left, that of a peaceful passage to an elected government. To oversee this process, we hurriedly put together a transition government. Comrade Melusi looked around the restaurant. It was empty. He consulted a wall clock. It told him 1:30 p.m. There should have been many diners. Instead, he and his visitor were the only customers. People in Zimbabwe did not eat out anymore, unless, as now, some foreign was footing the bill. Their economy had crashed. Comrade Melusi continued, the commander of our group was the head of that government, he said. The visitor raised his eyebrows, surprised by what he had just heard. The commander of your group was? He asked. Lunch was his idea. There was a subject he wanted to discuss. He had told Comrade Melusi when they met. So how about lunch? Yes, on him. By the way, he had said his name was Tad Longwe, Director of Special Projects at AGDA, the Agency for Governance and Development in Africa. You see, he continued, I had always assumed that the other guy, the commander of the other group, was head of the transition government. Comrade Melusi shook his head. No. The leader of our group was. Well, live and learn, said the visitor. His voice was deep, as if he always spoke from bottomless holes in the ground. Correct, live and learn, Comrade Melusi agreed. Hungry, he looked blacker than usual. Hunger does have a dark side. Our leader and I fought Smith side by side for years. This was why he used to call me comrade. Then independence came, said the visitor, urging his host on. And a new national anthem was sung, Comrade Melusi added, in English, Blessed be the land of Zimbabwe. In Shona, the language of Zimbabwe's largest ethnic group, Simuzai Mureza we Zimbabwe. In Ndebele, my mother tongue, Kalibusiswe Ilizwe le Zimbabwe. He croaked out 2 lines in Ndebele between bites, then gave up. Our national motto was unity, freedom, and work. But what unity, what freedom, and what, above all, what for? When we had a new ruler now, let me guess, you did not hit it off with the new ruler, did you? Asked the visitor. He was toying with his food, having tired of stabbing his pepper stick with a knife in search of loss, then flipping it over on its other side to search for more. Now, with a fork for pen, he was drawing line figures in his mashed potatoes, smoothing the figures out and then drawing them again The new ruler did not appoint you minister, correct? He asked. Correct, Comrade Melusi answered, then took a gulp of his coke. He loved it. Ah, the part of it that remained, he set aside for another gulp later. The man had other ideas. He said, like what? Like strengthening supporters and weakening opponents. You have to agree that was shrewd, remarked the visitor. To retain power, once said a wise man, a regime must make its supporters stronger, its opponents weaker. Your wise man was right, Comrade Melusi agreed. His roast chicken was nearly gone. Anyway, he was shown our new ruler. When he discovered I was Ndebele, he deemed me an opponent, presumed I was guilty, and threw me out of his government. You are joking. Merely on ethnic grounds? Yes, but the leader of our group did stay on, although even he did not last long. A cache of firearms materialized at his arms, proof enough that he was plotting a coup. Therefore, out. The visitor pushed his lunch away. Too salty, he said. Let me ask you something, Mr. Melusi. Mr. Melusi, did you say? No. It is Comrade Melusi. All right, Comrade Melusi. Are you saying the leader of your group was sacked? Correct. Melusi had polished off his roast chicken. Now, he was picking up the last of his French fries. The new ruler fired him. A black hand went across the table for the pepper stick and mashed potatoes that the white man had rejected. Hatred, it's not too strong a word to use here, finally had brought the two men to a parting of ways. The visitor saw Comrade Melusi's scavenging hand steal his lunch. Taking that as a hint, he broadened his earlier generosity with a new offer. Would you perhaps also like to have dessert, Comrade? Yes, I'll try their chocolate cake, just to see if it is as creamy and yummy as their menu brags it is. The pepper stick and mashed potatoes previously rejected were quickly disappearing. I've found menus often overstate their claims. Yes, grossly. The visitor sounded dissatisfied. His pepper stick clearly had not measured up. I think I'll just settle for a cup of coffee now. We'll have only a cup of coffee, Mr. Longway. Yes, I hope they'll make it hot. The visitor looked around the restaurant. It had the mournful look of a funeral parlor. He snapped his fingers twice. Snap, snapped, snap, snap. Then he backed out his whereabouts. Over here, his voice tore through the restaurant's wall-to-wall silence like thunder through an empty cathedral. We'd like to order, please. More thunder. Over here, even more thunder. A Zimbabwean youth in maroon trousers and a white t-shirt came running. Good boy, the visitor said. Now listen good. Good. For friend of mine here, you go come bring me chocolate cake. The visitor had slipped into minimal English. For me, also here, go come bring coffee. Milk black, no milk. Hot. Here and understand? Young man, snap, hop toe. The youth fled. Believing this was now an opportune time to get down to business, Comrade Melusi cleared his throat, then spoke. Mr. Longway, did you say there was a subject you wanted us to discuss? He asked. Yes, I did. But can't we do that a little later, Comrade Melusi? You are still telling me about the leader of your group. Yes, indeed I was, said Comrade Melusi, sounding a little disappointed. Well, no sooner did news of the dismissal of our leader hit southern Zimbabwe, where then no sooner did news of the dismissal of our leader hit southern Zimbabwe, where then the Ndebele live, an anti-government unrest erupted in that area. Smarting from their man's humiliation, people there went on a rampage and attacked every government supporter foolish enough to come in their sight. Let me guess once more. Retribution against them followed. Yes, it did, swiftly. There swooped on the area the 5th Brigade, better known as the Gukurahundi. The what? The Gukurahundi. It is Shona for the year's first rainstorm that washes chaff off fields so soil tilling can start. It washed off the Ndebele insurgents like chaff. Alright? Comrade Melusi's eyes were starting to glisten. with the beginnings of tears. It started while I was still at work. I had business office in downtown Bulawayo, the capital of the Ndebele. I left my office at once and drove back home. His voice was faltering, but home was a 50-minute drive away. He sniffled. So, by the time I arrived, the slaughter had already run its course. I found the front door of our house wide open. That was not a good sign. I called out to my wife, "Ziliza, Ziliza." She did not answer. This was a bad omen. I rushed to the living room. It was in a shambles. I rushed out to the backyard. There was nobody. With my heart pounding, I pressed my face to the window of the master bedroom and peered. There was no one inside. I got back inside and tried the kitchen, and there she was. Her eyes were buggles of a dead stare. The Gukurahundi had strangled her. Then, as a taunt, they had splayed her on the kitchen floor. Now, Comrade Melusi dissolved in his tears. The waiter returned and delivered correctly a generous wedge of chocolate cake plus a cup of black tea. Then he fled again. Comrade Melusi composed himself. Then he reached for his cake and started eating. First, he ate in silence. Later, he brightened up and spoke as he ate. How the new ruler changed after the Ndebele insurgency. He said, the man had once seen as allies not just his fellow Shona tribesmen, but also all Ndebele tribesmen who had fought loyally for Zimbabwe's independence. Now, only his fellow Shona tribesmen could be trusted. All Ndebele tribesmen were rivals. This change transformed even well-meaning Ndebele into foes to be eliminated. Whoa, Will, the visitor was fanning his face with a hand. My, it is hot. In fact, Chaminuka restaurant, air-conditioned, was chilly, the visitor clarified. The coffee, I mean. He took another sip, cautiously. Even then, he nearly spat it out. It's too hot. His eyes were brimming with tears, from green eyes concealed in a clash with fire. He left the coffee alone and returned to Comrade Melusi. Comrade Melusi, why did the man change? The menu was right, Mr. Longway, Comrade Melusi commented. Their cake indeed is creamy and yummy. Are you sure you don't want any? Positive, answered the visitor, but I'm glad you like it. Would you like to have another piece, perhaps? Comrade Melusi's mind then answered, that would be overdoing it, Mr. Longway, don't you think? Now, where were we? Ah, yes. You asked why the man changed. Well, my guess is he wanted to be a life president. So he was, The voice was faltering again. Another meltdown seemed imminent. This time, the visitor came to the rescue. Comrade Melusi, let's stop here now and take up the rest tomorrow. He left and said a question he wanted answered. What had happened to the man before him that had cut so deep as to remain the raw memory it still was? Next time, the visitor wanted to try traditional food. Comrade Melusi took him to Nda restaurant at the northern edge of Harare. A sign at the entrance swore the place was the mother of Zimbabwe's traditional cuisine and promised nothing but serious food. They went in and ordered. Comrade Melusi picked up from where he had left off. In the end, I just couldn't resist it, he said. I mean, the temptation to annoy the bomber, which is what everyone had taken to calling the new ruler because he was bombing the country's economy back to the Stone Age. I decided to irritate him in a small yet definite way. Goodness, I was naive. Don't you mean brave? No, I mean naive. This is Africa, my friend. You do not go around irritating a head of state in Africa unless you are naive. So why did you do it? Mr. Longway, I've just told you why I did it. I was naive. Anyway, I formed an opposition group, the New Independence Party. The visitor liked that. You mean there was a nip in the air? He joked. But the joke went completely over his head. Still, the visitor pressed on. Then what did you do? I ran for president. Save your breath. There is no prize for guessing what followed. I'll guess anyway. The bomber won. Yes, by 99% of the votes. I and the other candidates shared 1%. Now, we knew we'd lose. We were naive, not stupid. But we didn't know we'd lose that badly. Yes, we did lose comprehensively, in fact, but we did not lose that badly. Were you angry after you lost? Yes, but not so much at my enemy as at my allies. Wait, were you angry at your allies? Wait, why were you angry at your allies? Because we could have defeated our man, but only if we had fought him together. What had soured matters up against him so much for you to think so? You mean, what had not soured matters against him? First, there was a drought, the worst in the century. It had hit Zimbabwe so badly that the bomber himself had declared it a national disaster. Second, there was the international community. It had come and clamped on Zimbabwe, a program it aptly called SAP. SAP, Structural Adjustment Program, explained Comrade Melusi. What did it want? It wanted to revive Zimbabwe's economy by restructuring it. Did it succeed? Certainly not, said Comrade Melusi emphatically. Then he sighed. Oh well. A waiter brought the visitor's order, a plate of aromatic rice and a bowl of chicken curry, both steaming hot. Then he hurried back to where he had come from. It is best eaten while still hot, Mr. Longway, Comrade Melusi said, gesturing at the visitor's rice and chicken. So, please dig in. The visitor unfurled a red cloth napkin onto his lap. Comrade Melusi, are you sure I can go ahead? Yes, please do. Thank you. The visitor stated and started eating. A bite or two later, Comrade Melusi asked, How is the food here then, Mr. Longway? It's absolutely superb, said the visitor. I'm glad you like it. Comrade Melusi said proudly, as if he had played a role in its preparation. His order came, sadza, a thick maize porridge resembling mashed potatoes, accompanied by a rich beef stew. Looking good, cheered the visitor, pointing at the beef stew. It is good, the visitor confirmed. Here, try some. Next time, perhaps, declined the visitor politely. Now tell me, how did the man win the election when Zimbabwe had been doing badly and everything spelled his defeat? He rigged the results. Aha. But let's be fair. We in the opposition did not help ourselves either. Instead of fighting him together, we fought each other. You should have looked for a way to achieve unity. They refused. Who? The leaders of opposition parties? Yes. Do you know why they refused? No. Why? Because deep in their hearts, they each wanted to be the next president. That's why. I begged them to lay personal ambition aside and combine our efforts and then fight the bomber together. You guessed it. They bowed me. After that, I let go. And each party went it alone by fielding its own presidential candidate, right? The visitor asked. His coffee arrived. Actually, there was one other exception. Besides NIP, that is, Comrade Melusi was working on his sadza, licking his fingers and smacking his lips from time to time. RAF, the Reformed Union of Freedom Fighters, also urged unity, but not for long, he chuckled. Its leader soon had to quit. Poor fellow. Young guns under him had discovered he did not have a university degree, a finding that encouraged them to presume he was useless. He did not have a proper education, was how they put it. Out he went. Then RAF fielded its own candidate too. So, you're right. In the end, each party went it alone. Then the elections came, said the visitor. Yes, they came. We lost big time. But you know what? Comrade Melusi smiled wryly. This was when we achieved unity finally. For the half hour, we needed to declare together that the elections were a sham. But by fielding separate candidates like that, surely you would have lost anyway, said the visitor. Not so. We shouted together with one voice during that half hour. What followed? Disaffection is what followed. Comrade Melusi had finished his suds. He was washing his hands in a basin with water the waiter was pouring down from a pitcher. I went back into business. Now he was washing his lips over the basin, which the waiter had raised to his chin. The visitor reached for his coffee and took a sip. More like it, he said. Nice and hot, he added. Then he turned to Comrade Melusi. Your new business, How did it do? I can't say it did well. Inflation was eroding incomes faster than they could grow. But I survived. I didn't live and work in as clean a suburb as I did before. I just could not afford the rent there anymore. No, I had relocated to a slum in a poor part of Harare. But hey, I was alive. He laughed falsely. Sorrow was in his eyes. Then there came Murambatsvina. Then there came what? Asked the visitor. Murambatsvina. It is Shona, meaning expelling the trash. Please go on. Bulldozers went from slum to slum, evicting residents by tearing their homes to the ground. Murambatsvina expelled us, the trash, alright? We got no advance warning before or alternative accommodation after. Nobody cared whether we lived or died. We had to go. It did not matter where, just go. Did anyone explain why you had to leave? The bomber tried to. Murambatsvina's real aim, he said, was to prevent disease and curb crime. Was that its main aim? Comrade Melusi belched. Disease and crime increased instead. No, Murambatsvina had nothing to do with curbing of disease and crime. Its true aim was to punish us, the urban poor, for supporting opposition parties. Waiter, come. The visitor was ready to pay. A female waiter came. We hope you've enjoyed our hospitality, sir, she said to the visitor, ignoring Comrade Melusi. She had presumed correctly that the visitor was her real debtor. But if there was anything not to your liking, please note it down on the questionnaire our receptionist will ask you to fill out as you leave. Her English was perfect, a fact of which she seemed immensely proud. And now, sir, here is your bill. A big stack of cash dwarfing the debt came out to settle the bill. Keep change, offered the visitor in degraded English, as if to take this proud woman down a peg. His effort did not work. Her pride still intact, she made off with her prize and bowed. Comrade Melusi resumed. Murambatsvina chewed me up, then spat me out, he said. I imagine it did, said the visitor. Listen, you've been through hell, Melusi. So here, he reached into a side pocket for another stack of American dollars this time, and handed to him. Thank you, Mr. Longway, Comrade Melusi said, accepting his gift gratefully. Thank you very much. A document titled Path Alpha followed. This document, explained the visitor, covers the subject I said I had come to discuss with you. That is, mobilizing our discontent with Africa in its present state into will to change it. Comrade Melusi, would you be interested in joining that project? Money would not be a problem. Would he be interested?